What's good, brother?
Dude, it's been a minute, but you've been on vacation. It's
Yeah,
summertime.
it's all
Kids are out of
good.
school in 30 minutes. It's all like this is like the last 2 days
The
for them.
last
It's
day, right?
crazy.
Yeah, it's all
Tomorrow's the
good, dude.
official. We get like 1 hour tomorrow. They have to go in, which is like kind of weird, but that's like they got to get their funding from the state, so it's like
Right. Make
it's
make good on those snow days.
yeah something.
Anywho, yo, I'm stoked because we have Long Island Technologists tonight. Shout out to Vonage, who's been a really generous sponsor for that. Thing is growing, dude. Something to be
Yeah,
said about over-indexing on community and getting back to hand combat and really just immersing yourself in your larger human experience. But I have a topic today, and I think
let's
it's a
do it.
relative. I think it's a relatively timely one, which is something that has always existed in our industry, which is when you're running a customer centric, customer focused business building software. So much of the stuff that we build, a customer doesn't see, and so much of what's happening in the background that is like the responsibility of that software or that website is so much of the configuration of the plumbing that exists in a project. A customer doesn't see the value in. All they see is crickets, right? All they see is like something's not shipping, the backlog's not making progress, but there's a lack of technical empathy that exists in a non-technical customer. And so I wanted to talk about it because there are still projects that are out there where AI is not helpful, where there's a substantial amount of time and intelligence and strategy that is put into building the back end or the plumbing or infrastructurally so. And so I wanted your perspective on it because we're going through this in real time, and I wanted to see what a solution looks like. And I know you have a methodology for kind of how we approach building transparently, always being able to demonstrate something to a customer so that you always control the optics of delivery. And so I think that this is a really strong point, and there's lots of service businesses out there that I'm sure struggle with this, which is going dark, trying to build something with nothing really to show. And is that the most responsible way to handle the customer experience? And so I really wanted your perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said that you have to show the customer things that they can feel, right? So when it came to working in a project, I was always a big fan of working in a what I would call a vertical slice, which includes a front end feature that a customer can interact with all the way through to the back end of that feature, as opposed to working horizontally, which some people would do, where they would say, like, I'm going to build the entire API layer. And then they'd show up to the meeting and they'd show customer postman. And then I'd get a call like a week later, like, oh, it looks like they did nothing. And in reality, that's because the customer was like nodding their head yes, and since we deal with a lot of non-technical folks, they don't understand that aspect. Or if I'm dealing with a technical customer who understood that the API took time, they have trouble communicating that to the person writing the check. No matter how you cut it, the person writing the check is never the engineer. It's never the person with empathy for the problem. So you always have to kind of please them, and for better or for worse, people may not enjoy hearing that, but I always found out now on a developer side, I always still liked working in vertical slices, because I find that when you do build something like the whole API, once you start going through and adding the user experience, suddenly all those assumptions you made about how the API needed to function do end up changing. So it was a bunch of wasted work anyway. So I ended up liking that. But I said the side effect of working in this manner is that the customers can see the stuff shipping. Now, AI has solved some of this in the fact that things are shipping so fast these days that very rarely do you get a complaint about speed anymore. It's usually quality type stuff that would become a complaint. But even those end up getting repaired almost as fastly as they get reported, almost as fast as they get reported.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting position to be in. We're in the business of building accurately. I think that there's a certain luxury that you get when you build internally. You work for an enterprise business, you work for a tech startup, whatever, like you're focused on the same project, you're focused on an internal innovation plan, and it makes it a little bit different from when you're in the service business. And I think what's interesting is, like, it doesn't really matter who's right or wrong. It doesn't really matter what the backstory is. It matters if something tangible, something that I can interact with, has been shipped. And so this is like, this is the art. This is the art side. The science side tells you to do what you're doing, which is build responsibly and, build the thing of least resistance. And some folks are more front end focused. Some are more back end focused. You kind of, devolve to where your comfort zone is. That works a little bit differently. And like, I'm interested from like the FDE perspective, the forward deploy engineer perspective. Like, to me, your approach of vertical slices is likely a real good solution for the forward deploy engineer to employ.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always said that you have to kind of bring the customer along for the journey. So I that the way that I've always looked at this is you really, it's almost like showing your work on like a math test. The way I think about it is like, show your work, be over communicative. So, you really have to have these things like in the tickets, say like, these are the challenges. This is what I worked on. I am a big fan of over communication. The problem though with that is there's so many channels of communication these days that this gets hard. There are people in Slack, but it's surprising to me, but a lot of the CEOs are not Slackers. They are traditional email people. And so they see no updates. They, if they come down on one of their lower downs, it's very common for, to kill the messengers, to kick the agency. Oh, well, the agency's not giving me enough information, even though the information's all in the tickets, or maybe it's in Slack, but they're just kind of defending themselves. So you have to be a little bit, you have to figure out the channel issue. And so we've kind of figured that out by trying to meet people where they're at, which is there should be roll-up emails. If the CEO is not in the Slack channel, you want to make sure that, or whoever's writing the check, if they're not in the Slack channel, you got to do a roll-up email at the end of the week. Let them know what was happening. They need to, they should be in the project boards. But once again, if they're not in there day to day, they're likely not going to say, oh, what was that solution that they were using? I'm going to log into Jira and check that. They typically will want some kind of an email trail to roll back to. So you still have to do some of that like traditional customer service type stuff. But we do have the challenge of there's just too many channels of communication. Like even now, I find myself being challenged by this because people like to message me on Slack, or sometimes people text message me. So I try and make sure everything gets back into Fin, which is our project management solution these days. And I specifically built the AI assistant to handle that, which is like, I'm just going to copy paste this, make sure that this gets turned into tickets, it's on the backlog, because we need a way to track this stuff. But there's a lot of this like phantom side work that sort of happens because, someone hit me with a Slack message, I deployed a fix, but now there's no documentation of it. I don't know about it because it was a private DM between you and the customer. So as a forward deployed engineer, you really do have to think about just like making the work visible so that the rest of the organization can actually help you when problems arise.
And so much of our motion, just to give like a little transparency about how we do things, I'm sure other businesses do this as well. Everything has a redundancy. We're meeting people where they're at every possible level. There's constant Slack communication. There's a project management solution that's doing ticket management that does email conversation. Right? Every time a comment is made, if you're a part of that ticket, you get an email about the progress of that ticket. There's weekly roll-ups and summaries of things that are in flight or blocked or what's been completed. There's weekly calls with customers, which is just live. We're going to either burn down the backlog and have a conversation about priorities for the next task, or working on strategy or whatever that might be. There are constant vehicles of communication that we deploy to try and meet everybody where they're at. We have customers that have all different types of skill sets, all different size organizations, all different layers of middle management and various points of contact that are running these projects. And for us, it was really not like there's one way of communication to solve it all. It was, let's provide all of these things in an incredible way so that nobody could say, I didn't know. And so the real challenge becomes, well, what did you deliver? That really is the end of the story, right? We talk about this all the time. Like nothing really matters if you're not shipping. That is literally the be all end all, right? A customer will be incredibly happy no matter what if you deliver. They don't really have an empathy for what your story is, what the holdup is, what the lack of knowledge might be, or the gap of experience like that. None of that really even matters. That's all really the control of the optics in the customer experience. It's all about either shipping updates towards progress or actually shipping the thing. And so there's a dark side of this, which is the opposite, which is shipping too much. And we talk about this a lot with us utilizing AI as much as we do. It's just a feature farm. And so there's the other dark side, which is you're just producing too much. And then the thing that you produce maybe didn't meet the moment, or maybe is like not landing well, or maybe wasn't really well constructed with a proper user story, or whatever 1,000 ways to die for doing too much, delivering too fast, delivering too much of the backlog in a sitting, right? The dark side of that is I kind of lost the plot. We've shipped so much in the last week that I've like lost the priority. I don't even like, now I'm twiddling my thumbs. The next week, like I don't even know what's left to be worked on. That's the dark side of over delivering. And so there's a real balance here. There's like a discipline that needs to be expressly implored, because without that discipline, you're trapped in one side or the other. You're either over delivering and then sitting there with extra time. What do I do with my time? And then you're going back to your customer. How do you want me to spend my time? Which is an uncomfortable position for a non-technical
Well, I
customer to be
think
in.
you're highlighting the main issue. Time and materials is dead.
Dead, bro.
You got to get away from that billing model. That's something that agencies have relied on for ages. I just had a conversation on X with someone about this, where I was like, the challenge is if a 12-month project now takes 3 months, I still don't sell 12-month projects every 3 months. I needed the full 12 months to find the next project for that team, and the sales cycle is not accelerated. So like, even though we've increased the throughput, that just means customers are done sooner. So you really have to get to a value-based pricing model very quickly. But even then, there's only so much value. When something only takes 3 months, it only appears to be so valuable. Right. So what ends up happening is either that project has more on the back of it, where there's always something to do, it continues, but sometimes it doesn't. Right? Everybody's now going after the small to mid-sized business single-use tool market. We're doing it too. Single-use tool means it does what it's supposed to. It doesn't need new features. It's not being sold as a SaaS model. I don't have to create more features to create competition. It does what it does for the business. It's done. Over. There's a maintenance contract that does not cost that much money. It can't cost as much as a SaaS. It's not a $60,000 a month maintenance contract. Otherwise, what was the point of building the damn thing? I would have just used Salesforce. So when we are looking at this idea of like, you're going to build your own software, you're going to cut costs, you're going to reduce this just means I have to sell a lot more of that thing as an agency to keep that team employed and moving. And if the sales is not accelerating at that rate, at the same rate that AI is, then that's a problem. I would say that's a problem. You either need to fill in with a lot, more smaller jobs, but now 3-month jobs are only 2-week jobs, so everybody's kind of dealing with this, I think, I don't know what the answer is. That's what I should say. But this is the challenge for agency owners. I'm seeing it all over the place where people are like, well, sales are soft. I go, are sales soft? Or is it that projects that used to be bigger are just not that big anymore? Your 3D print, it's like if you could suddenly 3D print a house and all the carpenters were like, well, we finished that house in a half a day. That used to be a 6-month project to pour the foundation and everything. What are we going to do? So now you got to just find more houses to build. And so now your cost becomes lower to do that stuff, which is great. So now like price isn't the barrier to entry for a lot of places, but now it's reaching those places, figuring out who could use this new power that's out in the marketplace. So these are all the kind of challenges when you have this, what I would call it is an asymmetric acceleration on the production and work side without a demand. So that's kind of what we're seeing. Like the demand is not there. The supply, we got a lot of supply now. Like the supply is hours in the day, so to speak, machine time, whatever. We're not seeing the same demand creep up with it. So you have to figure out how to make that demand happen, which is dropping prices, which inherently creates problems for people's salaries and what they were used to making. And how do you balance all of this, dude? This is a really crazy economy. This is definitely a freaking crazy economy. And I have thoughts on it. Those thoughts change every day. And, we'll see where we land, because, we have some ideas and we're surviving and, dare I say, thriving in the moment. But it definitely is not lost on me that every agency we talk to is seeing this.
It's certainly existential. It certainly feels industry wide. We talk to a ton of very successful, very long-term agency owners that have been doing this business for 20, 30, maybe 40 years, have been in the internet space providing service. This is by far the most challenging time for everybody, because it's a disruption of a model that has worked for a very long period of time, which was time and materials. Bodies on a project, long-term projects, and that just isn't the climate anymore. And so we can't just be naive. We're always looking for a way to add value. One of the hardest things to do is to upsell, cross-sell. It's a very difficult thing. Like, it's easy to say, it's hard to do. It's easy to say, like, oh, you have a website customer that you've built this beautiful website. I'm going to offer them omni-channel marketing strategy. I mean, that's cool, but that's like not necessarily the thing that you're known for. And then if you're known for doing both of those things, do you do them both extremely well? And so the conundrum of how do you keep a customer long-term and constantly happy and constantly shipping something that maps to value, all of these things have to map to kind of one of two things. It's the reduction of pain or the increase of revenue. Can't just like remain static. If you take a customer through an entire build and it doesn't eliminate their pain or find them new money, what was the point? And so we're kind of stuck in this place. The whole industry is stuck in this place. How do you do value-based pricing in a continuous way? Because finding a new customer is actually the hardest part. Finding leads, finding new customers, building long-term trustworthy relationships, that's actually the hard part. Building things has never been easier. Dude, thanks for a good episode.